Put them in the Supreme Court for me. One of the judges was the one who was hearing the Jakpa matter. That judge heard the tape, said, this is troubling. Learned Attorney General, if I were you, if you will listen to me, you will stay away from this case. Ali, just to give you that the allure of some credibility. You see the way he sounded? There's a certain sense where he feels that everything he does is right. And that feeling, I don't know where there's a certain sense, this arrogance. I don't get it wrong. In fact, if you are looking for a persona that defines arrogance, you bypass Godfrey Adam, you'll find that. You see, he feels that he can never get it wrong. No matter what you say to him, and Nancy is right, no matter what you say to him, he will never accept that he was wrong. So this was a judge who sat there and said, this thing that I have heard. In fact, the only reason there was not a mistrial, because the concept of mistrial does not exist on our books. So the judge didn't know how to treat it. But the judge too could have done something that would be unique and that would, in fact, change the way in which prosecutions are done in this country. But she decided not to do that. But she said, please, this tape and what I have heard on you doing on this tape, or you saying on this tape, please stay away. So we all talked about that and how he had been heavily discredited. How if this was Chachuchi Kata would have lost his license. How if this was Dominic Aine would have, remember they nearly disbarred Dominic. Do you know what Dominic Aine did? He commented, he granted an interview to the media. They wanted to take away his license. They thought he couldn't talk again. That was the interview. And this was like a stock in trade of Godfrey Adami. Every time you come and grant an interview and take on judges and take on everybody. But nobody touched Godfrey Adami. So he had this sense that if I am doing it, it's for the right reasons. If Nancy is doing the same thing, Nancy is doing it for the wrong reason. Godfrey Adami, Nanado Sachetman, says that Thadeus, with his record, Thadeus is an NDC man, a known NDC man. Thadeus, in fact, when I was in court, there were some people who were tagged by political parties. Nobody ever tagged Thadeus NDC. But Thadeus is one of those lawyers where when you go back into history, you can trace a certain sense where he took his job so seriously. He represents anybody on the political aisle. It can be any party. He will take any case. As long as he's convinced that there's a case to be won and there's a case to fight for, he will do it. And that's why most people kept going back to him. That's Thadeus, He says because Thadeus represents the speaker. He's a lawyer for the speaker. Thadeus is NDC. He is not MPPO. He is doing it for the right reasons. Chachuchi Kata is NDC. The man who, if the NDC, sometimes the NDC people want to beat him up. In fact, sometimes when he writes, the way the NDC people want to deal with him, Oliver Baka-Boma, he is, people in both parties don't like him because he can fire his salvos anywhere. So Oliver Baka-Boma is NDC. All of them are NDC. But he, prophet, evangelist, Godfrey Adami, he can do no wrong. So he's fighting for the judiciary. He is fighting for the judiciary by fighting some people within the judiciary who are fighting CJ Tokono. So CJ Tokono is a representation of the judiciary for him. And he's fighting.
First of his name. Fighter of the judiciary. Fighter for the judiciary. Fighter.
So that's what he said. Now, there was a response from Thadeus. In fact, Thadeus was largely a lawyer whose voice you'd never hear. In fact, there were two people. Thadeus, sorry, Tony Lita started at some point by granting interviews and you doing analysis. That was all Tony. But at some point he stopped. So Tony, if you send, he won't talk. And they were saying for Thadeus, sorry. But at some point, I don't know what happened. Then Thadeus started writing on Facebook. He responded to this particular interview. Nancy, what did he say?
The title is The Incongruous Crybaby Again. Now, this will be the direct and straightforward, no allegoric narrations. This is because the crybaby needs another knock, and each time he refuses to hit the lesson from the previous knock, the next knock must be harder. Mr. Incongruous Crybaby has no sense of shame at all. Having failed to attract attention for some time now, Mr. Crybaby has once again started screaming. This time, the forum for his mostly infamous scream is Joy FM's Top Story program, not his favorite forum. Why is his favorite forum anyway? Now, without any sense of compunction, Crybaby incongruously lamented thus: if there are any group of people who have politicized the process, it is the NDC government. Look at the band of lawyers representing the petitioners. Mr. Shachushikata, Mr. Thadeus, a lawyer who has gone on record as representing all NDC figures in the past 8 years and who is very much associated with the NDC. Oliver Bakavomao, a young man who worked with President Mahama in his office. I didn't know that. That indeed is most incongruous. Who, I ask, are the band of lawyers representing the suspended CJ? In just about a month, you, yes, Mr. Crybaby, have personally appeared in 2 of the 4 suits directly involving proceedings for the Chief Justice's removal. You were appointed Deputy Attorney General by former President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Hardly a coincidence. That appointment itself was incongruous. Your elevation to Attorney General was even more so. Do you recall the host of card-carrying NPP lawyers who surrounded you? Not as a private legal practitioner, but as Attorney General during the Supreme Court proceedings on the vacant seats case. Now, and yet, without any shred of moral scrabble, you allege that I represent an individual, Dan Ofori, solely because I am NDC affiliated, even though I represented this client long before the suspended Chief Justice was elevated to the Court of Appeal. Allow me to refresh your memory on my legal diversity. Mr. Ambrose Derry, your colleague minister, was my pupil master. Together, we defended Malam Yusivisa, who was appointed by President Kufuor. I shared a night at the police headquarters with Honorable Obi Amwa, an MPP stalwart, during a politically sensitive case. I defended accused persons in the Issa Mobila criminal trial, a matter that became a major campaign. The firm, Kulendi at Law, can attest to the massive support I gave them in the Ghana at 50 case. Were those accused persons in the Ghana at 50 case NDC officials? Ask Honorable Kweku Kwarteng. I represented him in the matter easily perceived as political and anti-NDC. None of the cases I have cited involve the NDC, yet here you are, painting me with a partisan brush. I am a professional, bound by Rule 65 of our legal ethics to represent anyone who retains me, subject only to is programmed to interpret everything through an NDC lens. You have my sympathy. In the light of all this, Mr. Crybaby ridiculously boasted, quote, if there is any Attorney General who from the start of his appointment has stood up for the judiciary and spoken against attacks on the judiciary, it is myself, end quote. Your present battle is clearly incongruous. It has nothing to do with principle. It is a blatant effort of self-preservation. Even in that same Joy FM interview, Evans Mensah observed that you appeared before the Supreme Court, presided over by the suspended Chief Justice, under highly suspicious circumstances, and now you claim to be standing on principle. As Attorney General, you benefited from a stream of unanimous and often controversial decisions in politically charged cases. You were routinely excused for legal oversight that in earlier years would have drawn scathing rebuke from the Supreme Court. For the record, I went against my personal principles and appeared on several radio stations to defend the judiciary, despite being directly involved in related matters. I made it clear I would take action against anyone who maligned the judiciary without any expectation of recognition. And yet again, without hesitation, you proclaimed, quote, it is about time good men of this country stood up for what is righteous and what is right, end quote. If all men in Ghana behave like you, where will the good men be to be fighting a blasphemous cause you have the temerity to call righteous and what is right? Now, how can a Minister of Justice defend a Supreme Court ruling when an ex parte order was granted within 2 hours of filing without hearing the other party? Communicate directly with an accused person behind the back of their counsel. Coach an accused person to implicate a co-accused. Your initial injunction in the Sifwa proxy case was dismissed. Now you reappear with the appropriate party and file yet another injunction. The audacity is staggering. There is no Attorney General who has contributed more.